Are LS swaps still the thing in Jeeps? Well, not really, and in this video, I'm going to explain exactly what that means. Hey everybody, it's Bubba with X's 4x4, and we build badass 4x4s. And today, I have a very fine specimen of a Jeep that in itself is worth talking about, but I'm going to come back to that at the end of the video and explain exactly what some of you guys are looking at, because some of you haven't ever seen one of these before. You may be too new to the Jeep community to really understand what you're looking at. But anyways, I'm going to talk about what we're here to talk about today, and that's the engine that's underneath the hood of this brute JK. Now, once upon a time, we used to do LS swaps in Jeeps, and we did a lot of them. It got to be kind of problematic, a lot of issues with the integration, so we kind of backed off of it. Well, with the rising costs of Hemi installs in JKs and JLs and stuff like that, last year forced us to take a little bit harder look at some of the different engine options that were available. And we came across the LT 8L90 conversion that we are able to do now in the Jeep JK Wrangler. And the brute. What exactly is the LT? Well, it's the 5th generation GM small block engine. And the 8-speed 8L90 transmission that comes with it together make extremely good power and very reliable performance. It's great, it's phenomenal. 5th generation small block. It came after the LS engine. In 2014, 2015, GM started to phase out the LS. It was old tech. They needed something newer to compete with the emission standards that were being placed on them by the federal government. So along came the Gen 5 LT engines. Now, this isn't an LT engine per se like you would find in a Corvette. I believe that's what they call LT1. This is an L86. This is what you would find in your truck platforms like your Yukon Denali's, your Tahoes, your Sierra trucks, your Silverado trucks, stuff like that with a 6.2 engine. That is the L86. It's a direct injected 6.2 liter aluminum block engine. It makes 430 horsepower and 460 foot-pounds of torque. With continuous variable valve timing, the power band on this thing is so smooth, especially when you're coupled with an 8-speed transmission like this one. You hardly notice it shifting gears. And when you do, you're only dropping a couple hundred RPMs at a time. So really the engine is staying in the power band. That's what's so great about these 8-speed and 10-speed transmissions, is that the engine hardly notices and it's just able to stay right there in the power band the whole time. And not to mention, that 460 foot-pounds of torque, that's coming in at 4,100 RPMs. That's not really that high of RPM when you think about it. You're not gonna be there a whole lot, but that means down lower RPMs where you are, that power is there. I mean, it's great. It's just a great feeling engine. If you're gonna compare it to the Hemi, it doesn't quite have as much power as the Hemi, but in these bricks with wheels, I don't think you really notice the power difference that much. And it doesn't quite sound the same, it doesn't quite feel the same. And if I was to compare it to the Hemi, I would say it's a little bit more refined. The Mopar performance is much more raw, it's rugged. You really feel it a lot more.
That tingling in your balls, big metal butterflies fluttering around your stomach.
Are you sure you don't have testicular cancer?
Like it's punchier. And you don't get that with the GM engine. It's not bad, it's just a little bit smoother. So let's take a look under the hood and see what this conversion looks like in a Jeep. Now, I gotta say, the guys at RPM Extreme came up with a really great conversion for the JK. It's not 100%, so if you guys were to order this kit yourself and try and do it at home, you're not gonna get the same kit that you're looking at here. We get the meat and potatoes of it, and after that, Exodus takes over and we sort of refine the kit. We really make it our own. We come up with some of our own bracket and mounting solutions for some of the different components. We choose some of our own hoses. We do a lot of work on our end to make it look as OEM as we can. And as you can tell, when you look under the engine bay, it doesn't look a whole lot different than the Hemi conversions when you're talking about how something looks OEM. We think it looks great and it performs great too. I mean, when you get in this thing and you turn the key on, I mean, this one has remote start, you can remote start it. You really can't even tell the difference until you hear that engine come alive and you feel it come alive whenever you put your foot on the accelerator. It just performs really well. There's no weird stuff going on the dash. There's no tape over lights on the cluster. It all works great. The cruise control works, the tach works, the speedometer works, your AC, everything works just like it did when it had the Pentastar in here, or the 3.8. It just looks really good. The cold air intake, We modified this one just a little bit so that the customer could retain that classic AEV Brute snorkel that's on here. It doesn't really function the same way as it did before, but it's definitely here. It keeps the look. And I guess you could say it is bringing some cold air into the cold air intake, but it's still, again, it looks great. You can see how we mounted. You are still going to run the GM ECU engine management right here. It is integrated into the Jeep cluster. And again, like I said, it works great. We don't have any issues with this. It just works. I can't say that enough times. And I say that a lot because compared to what we were dealing with before with some of the different companies or integration that we were using before with the LS, that was an issue. This seems to be extremely reliable, and I would say just as reliable as the Hemi conversions. The only difference is you are still gonna see the Jeep computer right here and the GM computer mounted up top. With our custom mounting solutions, it doesn't look that odd, it doesn't look that out of place. And the LT, I gotta say, it looks a little bit cleaner under the hood than the LS. So some of the things you'll notice when looking under the hood is you will see a larger radiator. That's a little bit different than what's in there before. You will see that we are still using the Pentastar fan. These two things coupled together make sure that this all aluminum block engine stay cool when you're running down the highway. I haven't seen any weird fluctuations in temperature when driving it. I've driven this thing quite a bit to make sure that we're solid on it. Every time I get in this thing and I start the key, I'm super impressed. So much that I will be putting one of these in my old JK, well, I say old JK, my 2015 JK Wrangler that's just sort of hanging out around the shop still. We will be putting the L87 and 10-speed transmission in that one to test it out and make sure it's good to go before we really start pushing that on our customers as a great selling point. But these larger radiators, the same as what you would find in the Hemi, you're gonna get a larger radiator with those as well, and you're gonna retain the Pentastar fan. It works really well together with the GM engine, and it stays cool. Some people are gonna ask me about fuel mileage. Just because we have an 8-speed transmission doesn't necessarily mean that we're gonna be getting a whole lot better fuel economy than we did before with, like, say in a JK and we did a Hemi with the NAG 1 transmission. You're not gonna be gaining a whole lot of miles per gallon out of it, but you are gonna be gaining performance. The whole point of the 8-speed transmission is that we stay in the power band. Yes, sometimes we can get better fuel economy, but really what we're after is that performance. We're staying in the power band of the engine, and that's what the 8-speed transmission allows us to do. Now that we've covered the engine, let's talk a little bit more about what makes this particular platform so awesome. If you aren't familiar with this, you're not gonna go out and find a whole lot of these available on the market. This is an AEV Brute conversion. This is originally a 4-door JK Rubicon model. AEV took it and they converted it into a truck. They stretched the frame a little bit, they closed in the cab, they put on this custom hardtop, and they built this awesome bed on the back of it. It's really what inspired the Gladiator. I mean, when you walk around it, you can tell. The Gladiator took a lot of cues from it, but it's not a Gladiator. This thing stands on its own. It's really cool because you can take just about any JK suspension out there and you could throw on this thing and make it perform almost as good as a JK. I will say that the Brutes have a little bit disadvantage with the wheelbase. They're a little bit longer than the Gladiator, and you can definitely tell in the turning radius, but personally, I would rather have one of these than the Gladiator just because of what it is. It's just such a cool vehicle. There's a few little changes in the body styles that took place during the production at AV, but overall, it just has a really classy look to it. I love it. I wish I had one. Well, I wouldn't do much to it if I did have one, except put a V8 in them. And a lot of them did come with Hemis. Actually, quite a few of them didn't come with V6s. For those of you out there that may have a Brute, or man, you look at this thing, you're like,
I want that.
Go find you a Brute, call me up, and let's put some kind of V8 in that thing, because that's what's really missing from a Brute if it doesn't have one yet. All right, guys, so now that you've seen what the LT conversion is all about, give me a call and let's make this dream come true. For other videos and other cool off-road stuff, click here.